Welcome to the Women's Connection. I'm Barrie Switson, your moderator. There's probably no more demanding career choice than the arts. I have here with me today two women who have managed to carve out meaningful and successful careers in the theater. They are Pamela Hare, Managing Director of the National Shakespeare Conservatory, and Sue Lawless, a Broadway director and Drama Desk nominee, who has a long history with National Shakespeare Conservatory. I would like to welcome both Pamela and Sue. Pamela and Sue, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Why don't we start with you explain to the audience a little bit about your background. Do you want to start, Pam?
Sure. I came to New York right out of college. I started working in the theater, and over the past 25 years I've spent my life in the theater, working on Broadway and off Broadway, and most recently as the managing director of the National Shakespeare Conservatory, which is a training program, a professional actor training program.
Great. Sue, what have you been, well, talk about a little bit about your background, because I know what you're doing.
Oh, yes. Well, actually, to sum it all up, I actually started as a performer actress.
Ah.
And I never intended to be a director. In those days, I was going to be rich and famous, but instead I've taken the backstage look at it all. Yes, it was kind of sudden, but once I started doing it, that seemed to be the way my career went. So I've actually been doing it for about 25, 30 years.
Wow. Pamela, the National Shakespeare Conservatory, NSC, has undergone remarkable changes in the past 25, 26 years. How did you become involved with it in the first place?
My first experience was that I came out of college and I auditioned for the parent company of the conservatory, which was the National Shakespeare Company, and they toured Shakespeare productions around the country. Well, they didn't offer me an acting job.
Okay.
They offered me a job in their office, and I took it, and I was so thrilled to come right out of college and have a job in the theater working. I stayed there for a few years, and they started the conservatory while I was working there, and I became the first registrar.
Well, how did it start?
Well, what happened was that the three men who founded the school, Albert Schumann, Mario Soletti, and Philip Meister, saw a real need for classically trained actors in America. There was an emphasis on acting on a very personal interior style, and what they saw was a need for actors who had the ability to physicalize a role, to have control of their voice and body, so that when they made acting choices, the voice and the body supported those choices. And that is classical acting training, where everything works together and the actor's instrument is his body.
Sounds fascinating.
There is a real big difference in schools of acting training. And what we emphasize, what the Shakespeare Conservatory emphasizes, is complete training of the body and the voice.
Oh, it sounds like something I should take part in.
Well, yeah.
Well, just let's deviate a little bit and get some of your background a little bit more into it. Prior to joining the NSC, you were a manager for Broadway shows.
No, what happened was I left NSC and went and served an apprenticeship as a Broadway company manager, which is a 3-year apprenticeship. And during that time, I went on the road, toured on the road, did chorus line, worked on Broadway with the basic training of Pablo Hummel with Al Pacino. There was a revival of Guys and Dolls with which starred Robert Guillaume, and I was the assistant company manager on that. And I spent about 7 or 8 years company managing. And then at a certain point, I got involved with the school again, and I decided to go back to my beginning roots in the theater, and I really enjoy working with young actors.
Well, how did your experience help shape what you're doing now?
I think when you go in the theater, you have to be open to what comes towards you, and you have to be ready to embrace it. And what happened was I company managed, and I enjoyed it, but there came a certain point where, for me, it it wasn't as satisfying as working with younger actors in a training program. And so I started doing that about 15 years ago.
Oh.
So it's been about, 10 years on Broadway and 15 years doing training of actors.
That sounds exciting. We'll get back in a second.
All right.
Sue, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, probably the most interesting thing about this conversation is how I got involved with the National Shakespeare Company first, was through my husband, who was an actor in that company. And at that time, I was doing a lot of musical work at Goodspeed, Opera House, and off-Broadway. And I met Philip Meister, and we talked about Shakespeare, and I had never really directed Shakespeare, although I had studied at the American Theater Wing, which included it, but was not the full program. And he said to me, would you come and work for us? And I thought it was just the greatest thing that ever happened, because I could learn, not be afraid of it and go in and do it. And he was terrific to me. He was a wonderful mentor. And, Philip Meister, his fans are legion, as are his detractors, but to me he was quite a mentor.
That's wonderful that you were able to get a mentor.
Oh, well, it was just so exciting. And so I started directing the tour shows that went out.
Well, you've been in this line of work for 40 years or more.
Yeah. I know I only look about 10, but...
Right. Well, we don't count ages, but Now, so what you've been doing, touring and directing, has really enabled you to enhance your skills and then come back to the NSC?
I'm one of the luckiest, I guess, people in the theater in the world. In terms of live theater, there is not any area of live theater that I have not worked in. So I feel that they all feed into each other. For instance, I've done a lot of work in cabarets, I've done a lot of work in major musicals, I've done a lot of work in all the different, like stock or dinner theater, Broadway, off-Broadway, and each one is different. I'm working on new plays as we speak, and yet I have a reputation for doing comedy, but I love to do the serious stuff. So my career has been blessed. And in Shakespeare, it's one of the places where you can put all that stuff together.
Well, did you always know you wanted to be a director?
Nope. Thought I was going to be this great actress. Knew I was going to be this great actress. And suddenly I just kind of slipped into this other direction. Directing.
I think everyone goes into the theater thinking they're going to be an actor until they realize that there's so many other jobs in the theater.
That's a good point.
Think so?
Yeah.
Because you don't know that all these other things exist until you get into the professional theater and you find out that there's press agents and company managers and stage managers and directors.
Viable
and they're all viable, and they're all part of the excitement of live theater, and they're just as exciting and interesting jobs as being an actor.
And it's something that you don't know about because you're so focused on one aspect of the business that you realize, well, maybe your talents are better served someplace else.
Right, exactly.
And it's wonderful that you're able to find them. Do you find that being a female in this business is very difficult because of the Old Boys Network?
No, you go, Pam. Well, the reason I'm being a little facetious, when I first started, I've had a very healthy career, and I've worked a lot. So the whining I could do about, nobody ever hired me, I can't really put forth too much. However, I didn't realize until about probably now, within the last 5 to 10 years, that with my track record, I would be much farther along if I were a man, with my credits, etc. And I have fought the Old Boys Network and continue to do it, and it gets worse as you get older, because not only are you a woman, but you're an old woman.
Right, and after 25, after 30, there's no business for you.
Well, theoretically, an artist matures, and I think that that's true, and I feel more prepared to work now, certainly intellectually, than I did when I was younger. However, they're always looking for the hot new person, which is great, but and I'm, as I said, I've been blessed. I still can find the new writers.
Well, let me just ask you something, because I understand that you recently directed a musical called Lydia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you want to tell us about that? Is that a Shakespearean? I'm sorry for the ignorance here, but
no, but this is what we're talking about. This all feeds into it. Lydia, full name is Lydia Thompson, and very few people would know that in the middle of the 1800s, she was a very famous, worldwide, internationally known star from the English music halls. And, you know, of course, this all from England, of course, had a lot of roots in all kinds of Shakespearean preparation, etc. But she was an entertainer. And she and her group of British blondes came to tour in America. And she was the first woman to appear on an American stage in tights, which was quite scintillating in 1865. And this musical is about her time here, and in essence correlates with the beginning of burlesque, because she was a star dressed in men's clothing, and what they did was reverse it, and the men became the stars and the women had no clothing. So it was a wonderful, you know, experience to work on it.
Now, let me ask you something. I'm not sure if this is the particular play I heard about or if it was another play that you staged in the swimming pool.
Oh, no, that I really did for the National Shakespeare Conservatory.
Oh, all right.
Because Albert and Pam always let me just kind of have my way. And they say things like, well, what would you like to do this time? And I said, well, you've got a big swimming pool there. And so they said, well, we'd like you to do Twelfth Night. And I said, oh, okay. Well, so it opens with, what is his name? Orlando in the Canoe, right? If music be the...
It was a kayak, wasn't it?
Kayak, yes, it was a kayak. And he did rolls and came up. So, yes, and we staged the shipwreck, and it was wonderful. I had a wonderful time.
It was Christmas in Palm Beach.
Yes, in
Right.
California.
Right.
And this is up at your place up in the Catskills, and you have a swimming pool?
The
On
National
Olympic
Shakespeare
side-
Conservatory has 28 acres in the Catskill Mountains.
Wow.
It's an old bungalow colony. It has an Olympic-sized swimming pool, walks and streams. We have 3 or 4 acting studios and housing for 56 actors and another 20 staff
Sounds like a
members.
nice spa.
It's
I mean, do
heaven.
they ever study or do they
It's
ever...
absolutely heaven. Well, the nice thing about it is that it's, for an actor, it's a wonderful gift for an actor to be able to give to him or herself, because it's 6 weeks of intensive work on his or her craft. They roll out of bed and go to a physical warm-up class, and then they do a vocal warm-up class, and then they have breakfast. And then they spend
breakfast?
And then breakfast, yes.
Huh.
And then they spend the entire day doing classes in acting Shakespeare, scene study, acting technique, voice work. We do clown, mask, character movement, ballet. It's a very intense program. They go 6 days a week from 8 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night.
That's exhausting.
It is, but it's exhilarating if that's all you want to do.
But it's only 6 weeks, so it's not too bad.
Right.
Well, how old are your students? Let's start with that.
We usually have about 50 actors every summer. I would say about half of them are in their early to mid-20s. They're either recently out of college or somewhere in college. About 25% are under 20, and about 25% are anywhere from 30 to 60. They're actors...
30 to 60
Yes.
years old?
They're actors who have been out working, and they need a little oomph to get revitalized, to remember why they're doing it, to have that time to concentrate on their craft. We've had actors that have come and done the summer and said, this is just what I needed. And they've gone out and
Another
they've
shot
worked
in the
again.
arm.
They've needed that, because it's very hard to keep the momentum going of looking for work, of keeping up your craft work. And this is really inspiring for them.
Do the potential actors and the actors and actresses, do they have to audition, or is it anybody who submits an application to your organization?
No, we audition, I would say, in about 15 or 18 cities throughout the U.S. every year. We see over 200 actors every year. And we also go to about 5 different theater conferences where we see several hundred actors at each conference. And from those applications, we select the actors that we think will benefit the most. The great thing about this program is that most any actor can benefit, because it's not a competitive program. It's a program where you come in at the level that you're at, and you move from here to here. And someone else will move however far they move, but it's not a competitive program. It's everyone works at their own
pace.
Right.
Do they ever come back again, or hasn't been around long enough to know if somebody's coming back when they're in their 50s or 60s?
We have to fight them off with a stick.
Well, that's complimentary.
Really, it's
Yes.
true.
It's a large
Because
stick.
Because there's something very magical about spending that 6 weeks together with a group of 50 people. Because acting is very emotional, and you connect emotionally with people, and they become very close. And the 28 acres that we operate on is quite beautiful. And they're in heaven for 6 weeks. And so everyone wants to come back just to visit, you know, we've already had half a dozen actors from last summer contact us and say, can I come visit? Can I come stay and help? And it's, yeah, it's
well,
really nice.
How much is it very costly? I don't know how much, if you want to say, I really don't want.
It's a bargain.
That's
no.
a bargain, okay. But going on to the
wholesale.
finances, I mean, many of these actors and actresses, you hear about the starving performer.
Right.
Who funds you, or where do you get your funding? Because you can't possibly make your money from the 50 students.
Oh, actually, up until the past 2 years, we were one of the few nonprofits who operated primarily on earned income. The program is fairly inexpensive. It's $2,700 for the 6 weeks, which includes your room and board for that period of time.
That's pretty good.
When you figure that you're getting 35 to 40 hours of acting classes along with room and board, it's really not a big investment. The way I look at it is people buy cars that are $10,000 and $15,000. This is an investment in your life. For an artist, it's a very important investment in their life.
Do you find more women are applying, or is it more men, or is it mixed?
We have a very good mix. I would say it always ends up being about 50-50, which is good for scene study work.
Oh, well, who builds the scenery?
No,
crew?
I just mean it's always nice to have an equal mix of men and women, so that when you're doing scenes, if you want to do, you know, a love scene, there's always a man there to do it.
Right. Well, I guess you could kind of like go into the kabuki or something where all the men are dressed as men and women.
Well, they do a lot of cross-casting and scene work.
Yes, we have.
And that's a wonderful thing that's happened, you know, color crossing and gender crossing. So you can play Hamlet now, if you're a woman.
So, can anybody come up to your performances and see your performances? Are they closed?
Well, that's the second part of our program. At the end of the 6-week studio program, which is the classes, is the Catskill Shakespeare Festival and Tour. We mount 2 productions of Shakespeare every August, and we perform them out of doors, free to the public, on our property, on the 28 acres. And each year, it's been mounted in a different area of the property. Once it was on the swimming pool.
Well,
in and around the swimming pool. Then we take one of the productions and tour it around the area in Orange, Ulster, Sullivan counties, in the municipal parks of the cities in those counties. So that part of our mission is not only to train actors, but also to develop audiences for Shakespeare. And through the Catskill Shakespeare Festival, we provide free Shakespeare to the areas around us.
it's almost like PAP with free Shakespeare in the park here in Manhattan.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. It's making Shakespeare accessible, because that's one of the problems. Everybody fears Shakespeare. They fear having to go see it.
Right.
They fear being in it.
Now, I'll tell you a story in a second, but my question, well, I'll tell the story because it prompts my question. I had some friends visiting from Australia, and I was taking them through the park, and it turned out we got lost up by Delacroix Theater, where they were having a performance that night. And I said, well, you want to go see Shakespeare? He said, well, I don't know that much about Shakespeare, nor have I ever seen Shakespeare. I said, okay, let's get in line, because we got in the free line. And he said, well, I'm not quite sure I want to do this. And I said, look, if we get tickets, they're free, which went over big. And then I said to him, if you don't like it, we can leave. Well, we didn't leave. I mean, he was just mesmerized by the whole performance. Not that I remember what we saw, but he was just memorized because it was his first real experience to Shakespeare. And it was done very up to date. It wasn't done 18th century or anything like that.
Right.
So because we were getting it free here, do you have it free for touring, or do you have to pay to get in to see the performances?
Well, our motto, the motto in small type for our company is free Shakespeare is only free to the public. So in the past 2 years, we started fundraising, and we received grants last year and community support. The municipalities paid us fees to help bring it into their town, and they've been very supportive of bringing it in.
Well, that's great. So we got to get a schedule of where you perform and everything
Oh,
else.
absolutely.
So what is your secret for your success?
Wow.
Wow.
I think integrity, knowledge, humor, care, an extraordinary experience because, as she said, you're just in this space and you can't do anything. There's no, phones. I mean, there are phones, but I mean, there's no
distractions.
Distractions. All you do is that, and for someone who understands the value of that, it's irreplaceable. And it was. You think you guys were like the first school to start.
Yes. Yes.
Particularly on the East Coast, there was some. I think Pasadena Playhouse or something. But and again, bringing this knowledge to people so that they can have it for their own. My kid, I say some people are saved by God, and she was saved by Shakespeare. She was reading Romeo and Juliet instead of whatever you read.
What advice would you give to performers starting out, if they can't, especially if they can't get into the conservatory?
Well, I would say stick-to-itiveness. Boy, I've got a whole list of adjectives and things. No, I think you have to just, first of all, you can't be in this business, any aspect of it, if there's anything else in the world that you think you might want to do. This has to be the sole thing in your life that you want to do. And knowing how difficult it is, or how easy it is for some, or whatever it takes. And so I think if you just get here and you decide this is my goal, and I'll be flexible. If I'm not going to be a great actress, I'll be a great grip. I'll be a great stage manager. I'll be a great Shakespearean interpreter, a great dramaturg. Well, I think you have to just stay with it, and if that's what feeds your soul.
But I think it's also important to get training. I think too often actors come to New York without sufficient training and get swallowed up by it.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's too hard.
Yes, you must have
good
technique.
acting looks easy, but it's not. There's a craft to acting, which is what we teach. And too many young actors, they graduate from college and they have a bachelor's degree and in theater, and they think that they're prepared to work. But a bachelor's degree is an excellent education, but it doesn't train you to be an actor. It is as if a concert pianist got a bachelor's degree and decided to then go and perform at Carnegie Hall. There is no easy way to acting. It's craft and training. So that I think my advice for any young artist is to get training. There's too many stories and fables about being found, and it's too hard. There's too many other people out there that
are good,
can do the same job you can do.
You just have to be one step faster than them.
Exactly.
Do you have any success stories you want to share with us?
Tell them about winning Miss America.
No, not about me. I'll tell you about Joanne Zappé, who the National Shakespeare Conservatory actually started in Woodstock, New York in 1974 at the Bird Cliff Theater. And one of the summers they were there, they performed A Midsummer Night's Dream at the Woodstock Playhouse, which has since burned down. One of our teachers, Joanne Zappé, came to the conservatory about 8 years ago, came through our program, left, went and studied in San Diego, performed at the Old Globe Theater in San Diego, and moved back with her husband to New York. Her husband, Phil Hernandez, is also an actor. He's currently appearing on Broadway and in Cape Man. And he and she both live here now. They have a baby. Joanne taught for us last summer, and she was sitting at lunch with us one afternoon, and she said, I remember this production I saw when I was 16. It was Midsummer Night's Dream, and Bill Francisco directed it, and it had a lot of umbrellas. I saw it at the Woodstock Playhouse. And Albert was sitting next to her, and he went, that was the National Shakespeare Company. And so it had come full circle.
Oh, how beautiful.
She said, that was the first Shakespeare I ever saw. She said, and that's when I decided that I wanted to be in the theater. And here she was teaching for us. And
that is beautiful.
It's really very special.
That is lovely. Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time.
Oh.
Otherwise, we could go on forever here. And I wanted to thank everybody for joining us. And if you would like more information about the National Shakespeare Conservatory, I'd like to hear from you, and I'll be glad to forward the information on to you. I'm Barrie Switson.